So does it get more versatile than an AR carbine set up with a 1x optic and a magnifier? I don't know, you gotta let me know in the comments, but in my opinion, this is one of the most versatile setups for an AR carbine. Reason why, you flip this magnifier over, you can shoot rapidly up close on 1x, very fast, very effectively. Then you can flip this magnifier over, and now you've got the ability to really zoom in and see what you're gonna shoot at, identify your targets, and in this case, take shots all the way out to 600 yards. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, we're going to use the Eotech EXPS3-4. What that means is this Eotech has BDC, or bullet drop compensation dots, all the way out to 600 yards, set up for a 14.5-inch AR. Now, if you're like me, you've used an Eotech to shoot up close and you love that close range performance, but you probably are rarely shooting your 1x optic, in this case an Eotech, out to distance. Now, if you like the sounds of that, stick around, because in this video, we're going to find out how well can I push this 14.5-inch AR with 1x optic and magnifier all the way out to the max distance it's calibrated for of 600 yards. Can't wait. What we're going to do here, we're going to move into a gear review where we'll take a close-up look at the setup that we're going to run in this video. And then we'll fire this rifle up. We'll shoot a 50, 200 yard zero, and then we'll shoot steel, a full-size IPSC at 400, 500, and 600 yards to see just how well I can connect using this setup. So stick around. Hope you'll join me in this video because I think it's going to be a ton of fun. Before we start shooting, let's take a close-up look at the gear we're going to run in this video. Now, this rifle, the upper, started out life as a Colt 6920, and years ago I updated it to a 14.5-inch Colt socom weight barrel, so a little bit heavier under the handguard, and it's 1-in-7 twist. It's got the Daniel Defense RIS II front sight post rail on it. So my idea here is kind of the Block 2 style setup. Always thought that was a really cool AR setup. Bipod is an Acutac, which is extremely sturdy, wide footprint, great for shooting accurately. Lower is my Knights SR15 SBR lower with a Knights 2-stage trigger in it. Really nice trigger, haven't had a need to change it out. I love shooting 2-stage, so it works really well. The stock, we're going to run the B5 Precision stock. Comfortable stock, it's got a little bit of weight to it, and it rides a bag really well with this bag rider. So in theory, we should be able to shoot just as well as I can with how this rifle is set up. Now, the important piece is the optics package. So the optic is the Eotech EXPS3-4. What that means within that Eotech reticle is you've got bullet drop compensating dots. So you've got the large ring, you've got the center dot, which is for a 50-yard, 200-yard zero, which we'll test in this video. And then you've got 3 more dots below that. One of them, the next one down, for 400 yards, the one below that, 500 yards, and the bottom dot being your hold point for 600 yards. Now, it's important to note, with a BDC style reticle, that's calibrated for a barrel length, a velocity, a bullet weight, etc. So we need to make sure we're relatively close to those parameters for that BDC to actually work. The BDC in this Eotech, from what I understand online, is calibrated for a 62 grain M855 round out of a 14.5-inch barrel. Now, that's important to note. Ammunition wise, I can't shoot M855 out here due to the risk of sparks and potentially starting a fire in this wheat. So what I'm going to run is Hornady Black 62 grain ball, with this is 223 pressure ammunition. So 223 is going to be running just a little bit slower than 5.56. So that's something we'll have to keep our eye on as we shoot the video. I fully expect to still be able to make hits, no problem. But just note, 223 pressure runs a little bit slower, which means our point of impact will likely be a little bit below our point of aim at each distance. But I still feel like this is valuable, as it's important to understand as 223 ammunition is very common. And in my case, it was my only option here locally. We didn't have 5.56. For a magnifier, this is the Eotech G45 5X magnifier. Decent field of view, glass seems all right, pairs up well with this Eotech, and I can't wait to see how effective this is out to distance. So from here, what we're going to do is move down to 50 yards. We'll shoot a 50-yard zero, then we'll shoot at 200 yards to compare that zero, and then we'll move out to steel. We'll shoot a full-size IPSC at 400, 500, and 600 to see how well I can connect using this Hornady Black ammunition out of this 14.5-inch AR. So if you like the sounds of it, stick around. Let's start shooting. So remember, the center dot in this Eotech EXPS3-4, It's designed for a 50-yard zero, which should also be a 200-yard point of impact. So first thing I'm going to do is put 5 rounds on the top dot out there, which is at 50 yards, and then we'll move back and check our point of impact at 200 yards. So 5 rounds on the top dot at 50 yards. So there's 5 rounds. It looks like they might be just to the right of the target, so we'll take a close-up look. I might make a small adjustment, but not until after I shoot the 200-yard line. So from here, let's push back to 200 yards. I did take a close-up look at my 50-yard zero. My point of impact was just a little bit to the right of my point of aim, but I didn't touch anything on the scope, as I wanted to get a good look at how my 50 200-yard zero impacts actually looked at distance. So with this, I'm going to use the center dot from the 200-yard line and aim dead center of the bottom circle. Let's see where they land. Now I'll give you a close-up look at the cardboard target before we push out on steel. So 50 yards, you can see I put 5 rounds into about 1 inch or 2 MOA, and it's just a little bit to the right of my target. Then I moved back to 200 yards, I made no changes, and I put 5 rounds into about 4 inches, so still about a 2 MOA group. But as you can see, this group is about 3 inches to the right, which mirrors what we're seeing here. So before I push back to steel, I'm actually going to come left probably 2 clicks on the Eotech, which should be 1 minute or roughly 2 inches. So that should bring me back more to center. I'm not going to make any changes to the elevation, as I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing here at 50 and 200. Next up will be steel at 400 yards to match the first dot down in the Eotech. Let's put some rounds on steel. So I've moved back to 400 yards with my block 2. I've got a full-size IPSC downrange with a black dot painted in the center. Now at 400 yards, I'm going to use the first dot down in the BDC, which represents a 400-yard hold. And I'm going to put that right on the black dot for my first round. I've got 5 rounds loaded up. If I have any windage error, I will make that left to right while holding the same elevation as the black dot so that we can get a nice measurement of drop on that plate versus the BDC dot. So with that, let's put 5 rounds on steel at 400 yards. Comes off the right edge. So now I'm going to favor left edge, elevation on the black dot. Pack. So by my count, that was 4 impacts out of 5 rounds. That first impact missed just off the right edge. I then favored a left edge hold. Elevation equal with the black dot using that first dot down in the reticle. And from what I can see, those 4 rounds landed just a bit below the dot, kind of down in the belly area. But it looks like a pretty decent group out there. Before we move back to 500 yards, I'll give you a close-up look. So a close-up look at the target we just shot at 400 yards with our block 2. I was aiming here with the first dot down in the reticle, and as you can see, my impacts landed about, I'm going to call that 9 inches low to the average of those 4 rounds. Remember, our first round missed off the right edge, and then I started aiming basically right here with the first dot down to get these impacts about 9 inches low. Now let's try 500 yards with the block 2. Still have the full-size IPSC down there with the black dot painted in the center. Now I'm going to come down to the second dot down for the 500-yard line. I'm going to put that at the black dot elevation. Now at 400 yards, I was holding left edge of plate, and that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to have elevation of the second dot down on the black dot, and then holding left edge of plate. And I've got 7 rounds loaded up. So here we go. Impact. The left edge, so I'm going to just hold dead center on the plate. Impact. Impact. I believe that was an impact. 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 Now it's hard to see those dots, but I believe they're just a little bit low in the belly. Let's take a close-up look before we go back to 600. Here we are with our steel that we just shot at 500 yards. You can see we got 6 impacts. There's 1 here and then 5 down low on the plate. I guess this is probably a flyer, maybe me, maybe the setup, I'm not sure. But if we look at the group down here, it's pretty solid performance. Now my point of aim was the black dot, and you can see that we're about 8 inches below the point of aim with the center of this group. So trending just a little bit low versus the BDC, but still very capable of putting rounds onto a full-size torso. From here, let's push back to 600 yards. I'm going to put a handful of rounds holding that bottom dot on the black dot. So that's a pretty small target down there. This 5x magnifier, we're just running out of juice, so it might be hard to spot impacts, but let's give it a go. First round, I'm going to hold dead center of the plate for windage, dot in the Eotech reticle on the black dot of the torso. Off the left edge, elevation looked good, so I'm going to favor right, maybe call it 6 inches off the plate. I believe that was an impact. So you'll have to let me know in the comments what you're seeing. I can't tell if those are impacts. I'm not seeing splash in the dirt, so I believe they are. Let's run down and take a close-up look. So check out our 600-yard target. Pretty great performance in my opinion. You can see there's 7 impacts on the plate out of 8 rounds that we fired. Remember, the first round went off the edge of the plate, and then I made a windage correction and connected with the next 7. So I've got 1, 2, 3 up here, and then the rest down low. Remember, my point of aim was elevation of the bottom dot in the Eotech reticle at this elevation with the black dot, about 6 inches off that edge of the plate. And that allowed me to connect with the last 7 rounds that I fired. If we take the center of this group, which I'm going to call kind of in this area, you can see the center of the group is landing about 8 to 9 inches low. So still trending just a little bit lower than the BDC calls for, but very capable of making impacts on a full-size torso. So in my opinion, great performance from the Eotech BDC using that 62 grain 223 ammunition from Hornady. Wow, I hope you had as much fun watching that as I did getting to shoot it. Super cool to be able to stretch a 14.5-inch AR with a 1x optic and a magnifier all the way out to 600 yards with consistency. Now from here, let's talk about what I saw performance-wise. But while I'm doing that, I'd love to know in the comments, what did you see? Did the performance of this setup match your expectations, or did anything surprise you? Let me know. I'd love to chat about it down below. Now from there, what did we see for performance? So first things first, we zeroed the rifle at 50 yards, and then I shot a group on paper or on cardboard at 50 yards to give you an idea of performance. So what we saw was a zero that was a little bit off. Had to make a correction later on, but first up I put 5 rounds that landed just a little bit to the upper right of my dot at 50 yards. I didn't make any change, and then I moved down and I shot at 200 yards. And the point of this is to give you a visual look at what a 50, 200-yard zero looks like for a rifle set up exactly like this one. So for what we saw elevation-wise, I was just a little bit high at 50, and that transitioned into elevation. It was basically perfect for 200 yards. Now before I shot steel, remember I did make a correction. I did bring my point of impact over to be more centered up and corrected that windage error. So again, a visual representation of what a 50, 200-yard zero looks like. Now from there, we transitioned out and we shot steel. We used a full-size IPSC at 400, 500, and 600 yards, as that's what matches the BDC in the Eotech reticle. So for 400 yards, using the first dot down. Now if you're not familiar with the Eotech reticle, I drew it right here. Beautiful artwork, but it's represented by this image here and then the dots. So the center dot is what I use for my 50, 200-yard aiming point. Then the next dot down is what I used for 400 yards. The next dot down is 500 yards, and the bottom dot is 600 yards. So as I was referencing the different dots within the video, this is what I'm referring to as the BDC in this reticle. So at 400 yards, what I found is making impacts out there on a full-size IPSC was almost easy. So we fired a handful of rounds, connected multiple times, pending windage error. But what I noticed at 400 yards, and you saw it in the video, my point of impact with that 223 62 grain ammunition was about 8 to 9 inches below my point of aim. So not exactly spot on, but still very capable. Rather than hitting upper chest, they were landing maybe down in the belly. Then I pushed out to 500 yards where I used the second dot down, put that on the black dot of the torso, and again, connected multiple times. It was almost easy to connect on that full-size IPSC. Very happy with the BDC performance. You saw in the video, my point of impact was low again, about 8 to 9 inches. Finally, I pushed out to the full-size IPSC at 600 yards using the bottom dot on my reticle. And again, we made multiple hits. It almost felt easy from a really sturdy position. Now the trend you saw in the full video is my point of impact was below my point of aim by about 8, 9 to 10 inches at every distance aside from 50, 200. Now I suspect that was the result of shooting the 223 pressure ammunition versus 5.56. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any 5.56 locally, so I had to make do with the 223. And in my opinion, it still illustrates the point very well that the BDC in this Eotech is very usable on a setup, 14.5-inch, which is calibrated for. Very effective, really impressed with that performance. So you think about the versatility of this package. You can pop this magnifier over to the side. You've got that 1x capability to shoot up close fast. And then maybe you need to shoot out to a little bit of distance, which this carbine is very capable of. You flip that magnifier back over, and you've got multiple dots that are calibrated very well for this package to be able to make those hits. The tough part about it, I noticed, would be ranging your target, getting an idea of how far your target is, and then holding your windage. Aside from the drop dots, you don't have anything there to hold windage, so maybe you're just holding edge of target and then guessing a distance off. But in summary, if you're trying to run a 14.5-inch AR with a rapid close range capability, as well as the ability to stretch out to some distance if you needed to, great package. Really happy with how this performed. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. So with that, let's close out. I appreciate you sticking around to watch this video. Really quick, I'm super pumped about the hat I've been wearing in this video. I hope some of you have noticed. It's got a new logo on it from Nutshell Design on Instagram. Looks great. And I'm toying with the idea of maybe selling these to help support the channel. So let me know in the comments, are these hats something you'd be interested in wearing? I think they look really cool, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Finally, I've really been trying to grow this channel. We've seen a ton of growth recently, and I'm very happy for that. Now, how do we do it? It's your interaction that's going to help me grow and produce more content like this. So if you like this video, drop a like, comment, let me know your thoughts on the hat or this rig, whatever you want to comment. And then finally, if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel. Put yourself next in line for that next video drop. I got a lot of really cool things in the works. Maybe I'll put together a video of this rig on an 11.5-inch barrel so we can get an idea of what performance looks like from a shorter barrel using this setup. If you like that idea, let me know. Finally, don't forget to find me on Instagram at Mountains Mullets America. Really great place for us to interact, chat about what I'm doing, connect to the DMs, whatever. It's a great place for us to find each other. So with that, if you enjoy this kind of content, I hope you'll stick around and check me out in my next video.